In this video, I am going to be basically going through the comment section on the YouTube channel, Creative Comment, and answering a bunch of questions. So hopefully you will find this of value. So without any further ado, let's get started with these comments. Question. So your comment is regarding my video on the, what's it called? The Canon R8. We have ISO, did the whole ISO test. R8, R6 Mark II, both of them are great. Comment is crazy good. I wonder how it does for photography. My assumption is that it probably does really well. Canon cameras, I think, have been amazing for photography for God knows how long. However, my thought is this: if you really want to get a camera for photography that is a Canon, I probably would not go for a mirrorless. And the reason for that is simply because of lens choices, unless you've got deep pockets, because these RF lenses are crazy expensive. And for the price of some of the newer non-L RF lenses, you can get some L glass on the EF line. And if you're going to get EF lenses, I would say consider, again, if you're sticking to photography, I would consider getting if you're looking in full frame in R5, not R5, 5D Mark III or 5D Mark IV. I personally purchased a 5D Mark III. Here we go. This bad boy right here. I purchased 5D Mark III because I wanted a full frame camera for photography. Not that I do any photography professionally, but just, for family stuff and things like that. Good quality images. And I can also get raw video using like genuine raw video, MLV raw, that is then later transcoded to Cinema DNG through the Magic Lantern firmware hack. And so for that reason, I think this is great. It's not that much bigger than an R6 Mark II or an R8. But if you're looking for something that gives you a little bit more portability, then yeah, get the R8, especially if you're going to consider doing it for photography. Not my choice for video, simply because of what I mentioned before with relation to everything that the issues of one, it overheats, and two, the fact that if I want to use something for video, if like some of the functions don't work, like digital enhanced digital stabilization, it's just weird, it's wonky. Once you've got something framed up like a person, they start moving their head, the frame starts moving with it. And this is an issue with both the R6 Mark II and the R8. And I wish, if Canon were to fix that, I would consider the R8 if it falls below $1,000, or even the R6 Mark II if it falls below $2,000. So, but yeah, the digital IS enhanced is just wonky and buggy. What would totally sell me on Canon for video, the R line of cameras, is if they were to enable gyro data capture that I can then later stabilize in gyro flow. Right now, the Blackmagic cameras are doing it. It's one of the reasons why I have been eyeing the Blackmagic design cameras, specifically the original 4K, as well as the new one that just came out, which is the Blackmagic Cinema Camera 6K. And the higher resolution in the 6K is advantageous in the sense that when you are digitally stabilizing, you're going to crop in, so therefore you're going to lose some resolution. But if you're outputting in 4K, that 6K resolution, that added, essential resolution, will be great for you to not lose any resolution quality. It's not that big a deal, but it's one of those things that has piqued my interest. Right now, I'm using my Sony cameras for that particular feature, and I'm more apt to take my Sony cameras out. But if Canon were to enable that, bro, that would be awesome. But just my thoughts on that. We have a comment on the low light for the this guy right here. Long live Magic Lantern 5D Mark III Ditto. What do we have here? Thank you so much for this tutorial with relation to how using a action camera with gyro data i.e. the Insta360 or a GoPro, can potentially remove your use for gimbal. Lily Schwartz says, thank you so much for making this tutorial. Just the other day, I was considering the logistics of taking the EOS M and a tripod plus another camera. Now I'll just put my Insta360 on top and get even more flexibility. Is it me, or do the options of using the EOS M only get better with age? Very cool. Yes, indeed, they do. That's one of the things. Like, if you really want to learn about how to use a cinema camera, I would say, or at least the workflow that goes into raw video, I would not advise anybody to jump into something like Blackmagic or a Red to start off. My suggestion would be is go through at least a personal internship with something like a EOS M or 5D Mark III, because the learnings that you will, or the lessons that you'll gain through the process of using a camera that outputs true RAW is going to carry over into the use of these genuine cinema cameras. Everything from exposing to rigging to devices that you need, because one of the things that you'll find is that if you're genuinely using a cinema camera, you're going to opt for things like manual lenses. But then when you have manual lenses, you might want to get some LiDAR focusing autofocus devices like the I have here recently. So I got a couple of things. Let me show you 1 second. So I got a couple of things here. So here, this is the EOS M Magic Lantern RAW. There's a 3D focusing thing that I got from DJI, which I mounted on here using the Axon Cine device. Now, recently there's another product that came out from PD Movie called the Live Air 3 Smart. Same idea. It's got autofocus that will allow you to have lighter autofocus with manual focus lenses. I bought it specifically so I can use it with my 5D Mark III. As you can see, there's that little thing here that I'm going to be using to attach this guy, so I can manually focus my lenses. But yeah, like it'll be things like this that will teach you in terms of like the skills that you may need to carry, or that will likely carry over. Not that you'll need to carry. These are skills that will carry over into the use of cinema cameras, if that is something that you wish to learn and acquire. Next comment is from Neil Robinson. Very interesting. I wonder if a similar thing could be done in Lightroom to take advantage of the pretty spectacular neural AI denoise feature that they added recently. I will definitely have to play with that later and try to find out. Does DaVinci Resolve let me import JPEGs as videos though? I wonder. That's a good question. I don't know. I do understand that Lightroom has batch processing in the same way that Adobe Camera Raw does. In fact, I have wondered what is the advantage of Lightroom over Adobe Camera Raw. I don't know. I've always used Adobe Camera Raw. I've never used Lightroom. So for those of you who are Lightroom users, I would be very much interested in knowing the value and benefit of using Lightroom over Adobe Camera Raw, and vice versa. Is there an advantage? Is there a benefit? I mean, the way that I use the Adobe Camera Raw is that I'm leveraging Adobe Bridge to organize and look through and batch process. I'll just highlight everything, right click as I've showcased in the tutorials, and then from there, export everything out through Adobe Bridge. I'm assuming Lightroom is its own self-contained thing that doesn't use Adobe Bridge. I don't know. Let me know in the comments below if there are any advantages or differences. Now, also for anybody who does use DaVinci Resolve, I don't. I haven't had the need to just yet, although one of the things that I am also considering, so one of the client projects that I'm on, we are using a Blackmagic A10 Mini, and the thought that came to my mind is, if this PD movie thing turns out to be a major win, then I might just upgrade my personal studio and seminar setup to potentially Blackmagic cameras and whatever autofocusing I need, I could potentially use it with the PD movie, and then that would also allow me to then use DaVinci Resolve, because the biggest reason to not having adapted DaVinci Resolve for me has been that I would say 90% of all of the editing that I do, I use multi-camera editing, and Premiere does that very well, with relation to anywhere between like 3 cameras at a minimum to up to 6 or 7 cameras, especially when we're recording seminars. And so I bring all that. I have a workflow that works for me. The only instance in that workflow I feel like DaVinci Resolve would be better is when you're using Blackmagic's hardware, i.e. like the switcher, because then it'll generate for you a project file with all of the cuts that you've already done live, and then you can make adjustments. So a lot of the work is already good to go, and then when it comes to color grading, things like that, I can already, I believe you can fine tune the look prior to shooting, which may not necessarily be the case when you're using off-brand cameras, i.e. in this case, we're using all Sony cameras. And so what I end up doing is I bring in the pre-edit, and then I will match it with the locally recorded files, and using Adobe's Scene Edit Detect, and then I'll match things up that way if I need to, or I'll just export. The nice thing is that with Blackmagic Design's ATEM Mini Pro ISO, the recording that you get is a very good quality 1080p, because it's taking a 4K input. And especially in the case of Sony, when you're outputting via HDMI, the 4K that's being, or rather the 1080p that's being downsampled from 4K, which is said to being downsampled from 6K. One of the things that it's bypassing is the internal noise reduction, which is amazing. If Sony did not do internal, or at least gave you the option to turn it off in the same way that Canon and Panasonic does, then I think Sony would be amazing. But I just, that's one of the features that I dislike about Sony. In the same way Canon's digital IS enhance is really annoying, Sony's internal noise reduction is really annoying too. But that is an issue that's resolved when you bypass the internal recording and you export everything, or rather you record externally via HDMI. Either in a situation like this where I'm recording via OBS onto the computer, or I'm recording via a Blackmagic Design. That's where the advantage of that. But I can bypass all of that and get even more control, potentially with the use of Blackmagic Design cameras alongside a Blackmagic Design switcher and using DaVinci Resolve. That's an ecosystem though, and it requires an investment, something that probably needs some more exploration. If any of you have done that, I would love to hear from you and your thoughts and your experience with that. And do you recommend making that leap? What else we got? We got from my capturing Jupiter attempt. Nice work, thank you. From amateur astronomer, from one amateur to another. And we got Jordan Shama from thank you and God bless for. Oh yeah, I'm surprised how many people were experiencing the problem. So this video here is about. So there's an issue with the Sony ZV-E10. I don't know if this is something that is also pertinent in cameras like the FX30 or FX3 and the newer Sony cameras, but one of the things I had discovered on the ZV-E10 is that when you plug in an HDMI, there's a feature you have to ensure that you have enabled where if you don't, so essentially there's some default setting where if you plug in the HDMI via the Sony camera into a monitor, then you can press record. It'll give you the whole red outline and tally light and everything, but the countdown or the count up of how much footage you've recorded just remains at 0, because it's assuming that the trigger is also triggering recording externally, but there's no external recording. It's just monitoring. And so you have to go into the menu to ensure that you also record internally. And it's very deceptive. I don't know why Sony was like that, but this is a feature that kind of annoyed me for one of the projects I was on. Of the 3 Sony cameras, one of them didn't record anything. I was just like, yo, that's a whole day, not whole day, but I mean, it was a whole day thing in the sense that the work of that day. But there's several hours of video that I thought I had recorded, but from one of the cameras, we didn't. So I was recording in 4 cameras in totality. So it wasn't it wasn't that big a deal because I could salvage the whatever I needed to do because I had 3 other cameras recording simultaneously. And so it's just that it frustrated me. So I was surprised as how many more people were facing that. I thought it was just something that I might have messed up. So apparently it's a known issue. The Day of the Black Sun has been captured. Allahu Mubarak. From Beyond Awesome ASMR. Yeah. Avatar, a Last Airbender reference for those of you who don't know. DJI mics for podcast recording. Thank you for sharing. You're welcome. Solar Eclipse setup. That was an insane setup from Hijabi Nomad. You know what's interesting is so I did the Solar Eclipse that happened recently, and I guess to the layman and even to the locals, it came out and like, yo, this is a baller setup. This is amazing. Whereas for those of us who are in the know, is the ghettoists of ghetto setups. You know, from everything from I guess when you look at this thing, it does look like a monstrosity, but it's, you know, it's a cheap camera with cheap accessories for the most part. But it's totally like utilitarian and it's functional. And so I guess people will see this, they're like, yo, this is this looks really complicated. I guess in a way it is, but it's interesting to see people's reactions. And I guess there is something to be said about the optics with relation to how people perceive what you're doing. Now, granted, in my case, the optics was directly related to the reality of me trying to capture stuff, but it's funny because when you see the professional stuff, like professional star trackers, they look slick. They look minimal. There's not a lot of mess. At least when you've got things programmed and you've got the essentials of what you need, it looks very basic setup. People know it's a telescope, but it doesn't look like super crazy like my setup. And so I just found it interesting that people found that were seemingly impressed by it. So Solar Eclipse, cool. Okay, we have a comment here from Crucial Media Group. The ZV-E10 has damn near the same sensor as its big brothers, referring to the A6000 series of cameras, everything prior to the A6700. So we're looking at the A6000, A6300, A6400, A6100, A6500, A6600, and the ZV-E10. They are all the same sensor, yes. Now, the thing is, it's not just about the sensor. Yes, the sensor is the thing that the photons are hitting. But what happens after? That's really important. That's going to determine whether or not the camera is right for you. How is the camera designed in terms of software, as well as the accompanying hardware internally, chipset, technology, software within the chipset is all going to affect that. It essentially is going to make it a different camera. And so it's not just about the sensor, because if it was just about a sensor, then you wouldn't need a camera. You know what I'm saying? Now I pick up some good glass and you're good. I invested $5,000 in Nikon Z6 Mark II and lenses. I do mostly video, so it was a total waste of money, at least for me. I don't know much about the Nikon Z cameras, but I've been getting a lot of, I've gotten the impression that I would say a lot of the newer Nikon cameras are actually very good for recording video and things like that. So let me know if I'm mistaken on that front. But going back to the idea of being the same sensor, so there's the sensor, but then there's also the processing of the data that's captured, because that's what the sensor does. It's data. That's all it is. It's all data. And so how is that data captured? How is that data processed? It's different between these cameras. Now, there's a lot of overlap, a lot of similarities, but I'll tell you the thing that really makes the ZV-E10 stand out dramatically in comparison to the previous cameras like the A6300 and so on. Among them is the fact that, now, for somebody who's not doing photography, somebody who's doing video with the ZV-E10, The lack of a viewfinder allows you to save space. That's one. The other thing is thermal management. The ZV-E10 probably has better thermal management in comparison to the older ones for sure, especially the A6000, 6100, 6300, 6400 maybe. I would say it's on par with the 6400. The other factor also is the ergonomics and the design of the physical design of the body with relation to how the screen comes out, right? The A6400 has a flip out screen, but then it's not a flip out screen, it's a flip up screen. And so if you want to put a mic on top of the camera, it's going to block your screen. Then you got to get it relocating, cold shoe, and it becomes this other hassle. Whereas with the ZV-E10, the cold shoe is exactly where you would want it to be, and the screen flips out as opposed to up. The A6700 also followed suit, but then the thermal management on that is not as good as the ZV-E10. And so there's also a difference in the way that the out-of-the-box image in picture profile 0 looks, and HLG3 and S-Log. The way that the image looks out of the box is different between the older versions. What people refer to as color science is different. There is a difference between the older models and newer models. To me, I would say the ZV-E10 and the A6700 are closer, and the FX30 is A6700 is a different sensor. A6700 and the FX30 are the same sensor. But even then, that's another prime example of two cameras, same sensor, but two very different cameras. The way that they're designed, the way the software is designed, the way the hardware is designed. Thermal management is a big thing in both of those. The way that the camera comes out. The ZV-E10's advantage over all of the A6000 series cameras prior to the A6700 is gyro data stabilization. You don't get that in any of the other ones. So it's not just about the glass, especially when you're talking about comparing cameras from within the same class and glass. Yeah, but you're right. If you're gonna be what's it called? Oh yeah, A6300. The camera doesn't, the screen doesn't even flip up all the way. It's only flipped like just horizontally so that you can see looking down. But if you were to point the camera towards yourself, you wouldn't be able to do that. So yeah, a lot of that is gonna play into it, and is gonna affect and influence your decision with relation to the camera that you're gonna get. So keep that in mind. So that's one. But yeah, in terms of glass, no doubt, there's gonna be glass you're gonna want to invest in, and it's a question of the glass that you invest in is going to be determined by the type of shooting that you're gonna do. Now, in my case, I do a lot of different types of shooting in a lot of different environments. So therefore, I've spent a lot of time, energy, and resources on finding the right glass for the right projects. And for the sake of affordability, I've invested a lot in vintage glass because it is significantly cheaper and affordable. And for me, and I'm still getting a great image quality, generally speaking, but I might lack in things like autofocus, right? That's another thing. The autofocus performance between the older Sony cameras and the newer ones is night and day. So all of that's going to be a determining factor. So also 30-minute record limit versus unlimited recording, and goes back to thermal management. So again, it's a question of how important is all of that to you. So yeah, it's not just about sensor. Redman 1829 says, I ran into the same thing with relation to the Sony ZV-E10, failing to record. I ran into that problem, so your video helped me big time. So the screen on my camera is cropped now. How do I fix that? That's interesting. It seems that like it's not full screen anymore. It's on widescreen. I don't know. One thing that you may want to do, this is something that I noticed with the ZV-E10. I'm not saying that this is what you've done, but something that I ran into a couple of times is that I've accidentally switched the mode. And that's one of the ergonomic issues on the ZV-E10. Okay, so on the ZV-E10, the on and off switch, for example, in terms of the way that it's situated, So one of the issues with the ZV-E10, the on and off switch, the way it's positioned is right next to the thing that's going to switch your mode, right? And so many times in the process of me having turned it on, I will accidentally press this button, and so I'll switch from video mode to SNQ to photo mode. And so sometimes I find myself in like SNQ mode, and next thing I know, I'm recording slow motion footage in 1080p. I'm like, when did this happen? And so you just got to be cognizant of that when you're using the ZV-E10. I wish instead it was a switch that instead of a stupid button. And so that's something that I found extremely annoying and frustrating. So maybe that's what happened in your case. I don't know. Something to look into. This is a video unlocking the 4K image recording and streaming on the Canon EOS M6 Mark II. Thanks. This is so thorough. Curious though, is the streaming output also 4K? And if so, and assuming I have a high-speed fiber internet connection, will the viewer have problems that their internet connection computer are slower and less robust? So a couple things, right? So does the Canon output 4K recording quality? Yes. In fact, that's what I'm doing right now. I'm recording on the Canon EOS M6 Mark II. I have set the HDMI output to be 4K, clean HDMI, and it is sending that HDMI video and audio signal through a cable into my computer using a CamLink 4K. Now, the CamLink 4K will then require the computer to encode that using something, right? So in my case, I'm using OBS. Now, with OBS, you can tell it to output a 4K stream. Now, this is where you got to be cognizant of is what is the platform to which you are streaming to, and what is that platform then going to broadcast out to the world. That's where your change in resolution and quality is actually going to occur. So if you're using Zoom, for example, Zoom will automatically bring that signal down to a 720p or 1080p max, if I'm not mistaken, but it'll be a 720p probably if you turn on HD, because technically 720p is HD. But then if you do like a local recording, that's probably going to end up being like 360p. So Zoom from a image quality standpoint is the worst in my experience. Then you have software like Ecamm Live and StreamYard. I believe StreamYard recently has added 4K recording. So now it's a question of the person then receiving the signal, assuming they're using something like StreamYard or they're using Ecamm Live, not Ecamm Live, but they're receiving a signal from StreamYard or Ecamm Live. Let's say that's being broadcast to YouTube and the person is watching on YouTube, and YouTube has an option for 4K perhaps, then yeah, it's going to be determined by whatever settings they've dialed in on their end. So if the person is dialing into, they've set 4K as an option, yeah, they'll get 4K, but the quality of that 4K is going to be, or rather the performance of the playback of that 4K is going to be determined by how good their internet connection is, and or if they're watching it on their phone. I don't think it makes any sense to watch 4K on your phone because you're just not going to see it. 1080p is more than enough, and if you happen to have an amazing screen, like in my case, I've got the Google Pixel 8 Pro, thoroughly enjoying this camera, especially and its video capabilities. But this thing I think can watch 1440p or maybe a little bit higher. Fun fact about the Sony, not the Sony, the Pixel 8 Pro. If you're using something like Motion Cam, is it Motion Cam? There's an app. If you're using this app, it's called Motion Cam. It's basically a blue icon with like an aperture symbol. And what this app allows you to do is record uncompressed raw video. That basically unlocks open gate. So you can use the entirety of your sensor. And the good thing is, now I've used Motion Cam in the past, and I might even include some of the footage here. The great thing about open gate is that you can then use an anamorphic lens, and then you could shrink that down into maybe 16:9 or a little bit wide, or you can go vertical video and turn that into the square footage that can then allow you to use it for other things, assuming you want to process that as a cinema DNG, and then it'll take up a lot of space, no doubt. But the upside is that if you get yourself something like this, right? What this is a high-speed USB-C to USB-C cable, or you get yourself something like this. This here is basically a USB-C to regular USB with an SD card, and an SD card attached to it. You plug this into your phone. So you can either use something like this, or you can use a high-speed cable and connect this to an external hard drive, and then you can capture raw video, open gate, externally recorded. And this makes the time to be able to process footage, as opposed to copying the footage off your phone, which takes a while, so much better. So this is something to definitely consider if you want to use your Pixel 8 Pro to its maximum image quality potential. So I don't know how we got to that, kind of went off topic. So Julie Kubek says, great video, and thanks for the tips. You're welcome. Another video, I can't find the menu HDMI info display turn on to clean 4K. Oh, great. Somebody responded in video mode from the menu. Yep, you got to go to manual HDMI info display, clean 4K. Boom, you're good. This is the firmware version 1.1.1. Yeah. Also, yeah, keep in mind, guys, whatever cameras you have, make sure you update the firmware. So if you buy a camera, especially used, check the firmware, and it is a version that you need it to be. Not necessarily the newest one. When I say needed to be, is because for something like Magic Lantern on the 5D Mark III, for example, it needs to be a specific firmware for me to load a specific version of Magic Lantern. And so that's something you got to be cognizant and aware of whenever you're dealing with firmware. OG Joystick Shinobi says, you have so much tech, is if you ever get rid of stuff, keep me in mind. I want a Sony camera. So here's the thing. I'm grateful for the stuff that I've got. Now, the thing is, a lot of this comes with the territory, in the sense of, I'm not a camera reviewer. I work in marketing, and post-COVID, a lot of that marketing work, I went from marketing management. So my career started off in sales, right? And then I studied marketing as well. And while I was studying, I went to the film school, and I asked the dean, hey, can I take your classes for free without credit? I was going to school part-time, working full-time, and in my free time, I went to all the film school classes. So by the time I graduated in 7.5 years' time, I had gone through the film curriculum twice over. Along with that, I paid my way through school doing client services in the area of search engine optimization and website development, while also working in sales, either in telecom or something that allowed me to bring in the cash to pay for school as well as life and things like that. By the time I graduated, I got into marketing management. Now, because of the experience and the skill sets that I had developed over the course of nearly a decade, because I started working right out of high school while I was still going to college. In fact, I started working before I went to college. And while I was in high school, I was hustling, right? Entrepreneur at heart. And so that I'm entrepreneurial. Right? There's a lot of entrepreneur skills that I still need to develop to make me grow more. But I've always been a hustler at heart. And so that, and part of that kind of came with like, whatever I need to sell and promote, whatever technology helps me to be able to do that, I'm going to go do that. So whether that meant, getting the appropriate software for me to do website development, then or whatever skills and knowledge I needed, whether it was HTML, JavaScript, and so on, then yeah, go ahead, let's learn that. Graphic design, software, all the software around that, let's learn that. Because me knowing that and having that was an asset to bring in more cash. And so similarly, with relation to as my career progressed, I went from search optimization and sales into marketing and management. And I was working, I grew up in the Northeast, New York, New Jersey, went into DC. And for almost 4 years, I worked in DC in the area of marketing and management between nonprofit and lobby and for-profit storage industry. And it was always about what can you do to generate leads and how can you facilitate the closing of those leads as sales with the people who are going to close them. And so, again, the use of technology, whether it was digital advertising or creative that you would leverage against the advertising, and the offer that you would pair with the creative so that people would buy. Now, when COVID hit, all the communication became virtual, right? Became digital. And so now, granted, I had my feet wet with tech stuff, but not to this degree. Prior to COVID, I was getting into creation of seminars for clients in adult education. And, there were some basic Sony cameras that we got, camcorder style XD cams that we were using. They worked really well. Granted that you had a controlled environment and space or a set that you can develop. But then, for me to kind of grow and achieve an aesthetic that I was looking for, we upgraded those cameras by selling them off and getting these Sony ZV-E10s. And so, and the whole point is that the work, the stuff that you have is essentially just that. It's stuff that's helping you achieve a thing, right? It's helping you achieve your sense of what is it that you want to do? What is it you want to be? What is it that you want to have in terms of achievement, right? Accomplishment, the work, the what is that you're producing, right? And so not what you want to have in terms of stuff, right? People want to have cameras, sure. What do you want to do with the camera, right? Who do you want to be with that camera? And so if you want a Sony camera, the question is, what's the identity that's going to be attached to that? What is that you're going to be doing? What is the value you're going to be bringing forth that will justify either somebody giving you a Sony camera or for you to invest in a Sony camera that would then bring in more money? That's the mindset you want to consider. So hope that's helpful. Leo Lawrence says, you look like The Rock. I get that a lot. It depends on how I smile and how well shaped my beard is, I suppose. Here we go. Google Friends said, good video, would be even better if you remove the annoying music or turn it down. Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where I'm kind of messing around with and trying different audio tracks. Sometimes I turn things around, just kind of throw something in there. Granted, it's not necessarily the best practice, but for me, it's hard for me to get through any kind of content if there's not any kind of ambiance in the background of the audio. And I appreciate when a creator kind of puts that in there. I guess it's just a matter of what is your cognitive difference and whether or not that would distract from the content of the video. But do let me know. For example, in this video, I mean, as I'm recording, there's nothing, but as I'm going to play this back, I'm probably going to put some sort of ambiance in there. But let me know. Do you find it annoying, or do you find it something that just kind of helps you continue with these comments? Let's see here. Another DJI Lidar Focus video. Fantastic. Took me more than a minute, I'm sure. Oh yeah, it did take me more than a minute to put that thing together. Can't wait for a detailed video of your setup. Great job. Yeah, I've been meaning to make a video. I've been meaning to get the PD Movies Lidar thing set up as well. It's just that it's one of those things where, you got work and you got family, you got training with, jiu-jitsu, and got a lot of stuff going on with life. So all this stuff is stuff not that I do on my free time. It's stuff that I do on the free time that I make time for when I have everything else in order. So that's the challenge, right? The challenge of like YouTube is not my full-time thing. It's not even a side thing. It's just a thing that I do at my convenience. So hopefully, when I get the opportunity to, I will do that. In fact, I could be doing it right now, but I felt it was easier just to kind of go through the comments. It also helps me kind of get like I read through the comments like as I get them. I see every single one, but it's one of those things where like I'll see the comment and I'll reply in my head, but then like I forgot to reply, and so it's just easier for me to do it this way. Not to say that not to say that these comments require a reply, but it's good to have a connection with the folks that are here. So let's see here at the EF. There's a video on the EF to 70 to 300. AF5IU says, I believe I have the black version of this lens. I am thinking about selling it because I haven't used it very much at all. Bought it around 2010 and 2011, I think. I mean, it's up to you, right? I think it's always a good idea if you don't already have a super telephoto zoom lens in your toolkit, right? Then you should keep it, right? It's like, imagine having a toolbox, right? And you don't go through the toolbox regularly or often, only when you need it, right? It's like the idea of like, you know what, I'm not going to use this. I'm going to sell this jigsaw because I barely use it. But then the one day that you need to use the jigsaw, you don't have it. So I think it's a question of every toolbox, whether it's a literal toolbox for stuff that you do at home or that you might need something for, or it's your toolbox in with relation to the kit for cameras and things like that. There's a basic baseline that you should most certainly have, right? And that baseline is going to ensure that you are able to, for whatever situation arises, you have the focal length. So some of the more basic stuff that I think the 70-300 or 75 to 300, which is I think the black one, comes in handy when the one time that you need it. I believe is travel, right? It's great to have a telephoto lens that can get to 300 to get those amazing compressed telephoto shots, especially during the daytime. And so, or if you're trying to capture something like a sermon or a lecture, like that, having that compressed or zoom lens is highly, highly useful. And I'm saying specifically a zoom lens, not a prime. Because when I travel, I'll travel with my 85 prime just because of its size, but I do know that the 75 to 300 is a relatively light lens. It'll fit in your bag. I carry with me, I have with me the 80 to 400 millimeter. I'll take that with me whenever I travel. And it's come in handy. Whenever I've traveled, I've been grateful that I brought it. And the times that I didn't bring it, I was like, oh, I wish I brought that lens. And so, yeah, if you have more than one, then yeah, maybe you want to consider selling it. In my case, right, the first super telephoto lens that I bought was the vintage Tokina 400 millimeter f4.5 lens. It's just a prime lens. It was a great lens, and I used it once, and I didn't use it again for like another year and a half. Now, I bought that lens for like, I don't know, $70 at most. What I wanted was a zoom lens, and that's when I got the 80 to 400. And the image quality on the 80 to 400 wide open was superior to the prime 400 millimeter vintage. But when I found myself doing videos and of like the moon or moonrise or full moons and things like that, or crescents, or even when I was doing the solar eclipse, having both of them came in clutch, because now I can do two cameras. You know, that I was glad I had it. And it wasn't that expensive. Both the 80 to 400, I think I paid like $225, $250 for that. Maybe, or around that, plus shipping and taxes, probably came out like $270, versus like the 75 for the prime lens. Now, having both of them, I think a baseline kit for everybody. If you're talking about being somebody who engages in the hobby of multimedia, whether it be for photos and videos or content creation, I think a baseline is you should have a set of primes and you should have a set of zooms, at least in EF mount. So that way you can mount them to whatever system across the board. And that would be having some, and I'm going by the actual full frame standard. So for example, I have a Tokina 11 to 16, full frame standard is like a 60 to 28. or 16 to 24, 11 to 16 and 16 to 24 full frame. So having like a 16 millimeter in terms of full frame range, like an ultra wide angle lens, right? Anything 14, 16, 18, 20, right? And then a standard wide lens, I would opt for like a 24 or 35, or perhaps a 24 and a 40. 40. I love 40 millimeter focal length. I'm not so sure about 50, but like, you know, it's always good to have a 50. They're cheap anyway. Get yourself an 85. Get yourself a 135. My 135 is my least used, but it's one of those things where I needed that composition, and it came in handy. And then after 135, maybe something that's 200 plus. So maybe a 400 or 300, and that's it for the prime. Now, when it comes to zooms, having, so in my case, I have a 14 to 20. So I have a 14 to 20 from Tokina and 11 to 16 from Tokina, right? The 11 to 16 is actually, you get full frame coverage at 16. And at 11 millimeters on crop sensor is very close to 16. Now the 14 to 20, at 20 millimeters, I get nearly full frame coverage. But 14, I get some barrel distortion, so I don't really like that. So I end up using the 14 to 20 mostly at 20, and I'll use it at 14 when I'm using it on Magic Lantern because it crops in more, so it gives me a wider field of view, and you don't notice the barrel distortion that much. Then you have a 28 to 70. Or a 28 to 105. Notice I said 28, not 24. I have it, almost all the older zoom lenses I've used without correction, and especially when you're adapting EF lenses to other brands, then you're not going to get the internal corrections. So I noticed at 24 millimeters, there tends to be a lot of barrel distortion. And I don't like that look at 24 millimeters. Ultra wide, that's fine. I get it. And I might even go with it. But at 24 millimeters, it's really annoying and really noticeable. And so for that reason, I opt for a 28 to 70 or a 28 to 105. I have these two lenses that I actually am very fond of. Tokina 28 to 70 millimeter. One of the things I like about it is nearly parfocal. So when I'm manually focusing, I can focus in, zoom in, focus out. And as long as I and the subject are near and almost in the same area, then this comes in handy. The other lens that I have, which is kind of like a general travel lens and shenanigans at home fun lens, this is the 28 to 105 f2.8. Everybody is all like Google Gaga about Canon RF releasing a 24 to 105 f2.8 lens. Well, this is from Tamron. A 28 to 105. Granted, at 28 millimeters, it's at 28 millimeters, it's okay image quality. Not okay. It's got a nice image quality, but it's not like clinical, right? There's an aesthetic to it. And then at f4 and beyond, it's actually really clean. Yeah, this is a great lens. The only downside is that the focus throw is very short. That's it. From infinity to close focus, this is all the distance that you get. So focusing in video, it's like this is all, like, you have to be it's really sensitive. And in autofocus, this thing is stupid loud. It's like, oh my god, this is right. And the other thing is, when you are actually zooming, this is loud, right? In comparison to the zooming, right? This is the noise on the zoom and the focus. Now, obviously, when you hit the ends, you get the noise, but when you're not hitting the ends, that's the noise. So the focusing, parfocality, that's a word, it's parfocal, and when you're manually zooming, it's quiet, or when you're manually focusing. This reach and aesthetic, but when you are zooming, it's going to be caught in the video. So one of the things that these lenses will teach you is get the composition first, then press record. right? You should know what you're shooting at and what kind of focal lengths you like, which is actually a very important thing to learn about yourself and the kind of shooting that you do. Here we go. Well, thank you. Also say hi to your pretty kid. Hello. He's not here right now. He's at school. Stabilize. So more data says it seems like so much work. Have you ever considered just using a gimbal? Yes, I would love to be able to use a gimbal all the time. Let me show you my gimbal. I would love to just carry this thing everywhere I go, all the time, everywhere, right? To airports, whenever it's family time. And I would love to just be able to put the camera on here and spend 20-25 minutes getting it dialed and adjusted and balanced, so that way as I move around, it's fully balanced. And I love to be able to show everybody, hey guys, look at me, I'm recording on a gimbal at an airport. No, gimbal has its place. Now granted, there are smaller gimbals for cameras, but the thing is, it's like with the camera, like with this kind of setup, you're not going to get this to work on a smaller gimbal. You're just not. So you got to be cognizant of that. No, I can't. Like, that's why I value the feature of gyro data stabilization that Sony has built into their cameras. And so, yeah. Now, granted, is it so much work? No, not really. The work, the gimbal is far more work. Granted, it's work beforehand, whereas this is work afterwards. But if you know what you're doing, you know what you want, you know what lens you're shooting at, processing is like boom, left, easy peasy. And so, and it's even faster when you're using something like a Sony camera. I rather use GyroFlow over Catalyst Browse unless I'm using a zoom lens, and then because Catalyst Browse will then actually stabilize for zoom lens. Unless you're using a manual lens, then you got to use GyroFlow. But yeah, I mean, there is a little bit of work, but it might be a little bit of work in terms of the learning curve. But once you get over that learning curve, it's actually really easy, and it saves you a lot of work and time. So I hope that makes sense. Somebody goes, Peter D Videos just ordered a EF 7300. Awesome. JN Cooligan says, this video is so funny. It's like so much to say, no question. This information would be the answer to. Wake up the next day, damn, why don't I make a video, make it about a camera comparison? Boom, that said is valuable and valuable and valid information to anyone that is looking at these two levels of cameras to craft imagery. It helps them to also understand it's not about the camera. So bravo, but still funny. Yeah, I mean, look, my whole approach to any of the content I create here is like, yes, I'll share information about the tool, i.e. the cameras, the gear, and things like that. But at the end of the day, yeah, it does come around to the image that you're creating, what it is that you're trying to do. And so I try to frame tools around the context in which you're going to use. And so I'm glad you found that helpful. Now we got Lantern Magica. Thank you. Great tutorial. You're welcome. Robert Morano says, do you know if this works for other wireless microphones? So this is with relation to using your Rode Wireless Go with Google Pixel or iPhone audio sync for video. So do you know if this works with other wireless microphones? I have a Pixel 6 Pro and I'm looking at external mics. I'm unsure if I should get a USB-C or 3.5mm system and the acquired adapters. So it really comes down to, so I believe it'll work with almost any microphone, so long as the input that goes into your phone is the three stripe connector as opposed to the 2-stripe connector. The 3-stripe connector basically tells the phone that whatever, because you got something that's going to connect to the USB-C, so it's converting some sort of signal into the USB-C for the phone to recognize. And so when you do that, it needs to be a 3-prong as opposed to a 2-prong. For whatever reason, the 2-stripe is not going to get detected. So yeah, you can theoretically you could do it with any microphone. I have here a 2-stripe connector. The one that goes into the cell phone would be 3-stripe one. Now, when it comes to using microphones for your phone, my default recommendation is skip road and go to DJI wireless audio. Now, it's a little bit more expensive, but it is seemingly flawless. And you can connect anything into your DJI mic transmitter in the same way you could plug anything into your Rode wireless transmitter, but it just works. So I know I made that video a little while back, but since then, my Rode Wireless Go has now been relegated to be used as a backup microphone audio feed that I plug into a camera, specifically the GH5, whenever I'm recording seminars. So what I will do is I'll have a Tascam DR10L, which is a body pack recorder, high quality 24-bit. Now they also have a pro version of this now, which is 32-bit float. I don't see the need for 32-bit float right now. I also have a Zoom recorder that's 32-bit float also, but I haven't really put that through its paces yet. But you can get this on eBay for about $100, right? And it comes with a good quality microphone as well. And so that device will go on the instructor when they're presenting. And I'll also use this for videos in which I'm not sitting next to my desk, right? For example, a situation like this. I think that'll be the primary audio, the Tascam, and then the Rode will be my backup. When it comes to cell phone audio, I now just use the DJI mics. And that is my recommendation right now as well. From Canon, the EF 7300, something best from Canon and so sharp. Yes, it is indeed. The Canon R8 review, 6 reasons why it's not for you. Again, somebody complained about the music. Sorry, my bad. You can watch a different video, perhaps. Now, somebody says the Canon R8, not for you, but yes for me. That's awesome. If the 6 reasons, if I recall, it has to do with its portability, has to do with its battery life, its the digital IS, the overheating, and the positioning of where the SD card is. I am done. I'm done. Any future camera that I get, I am done with having the SD card on the bottom. Like, why? This is so stupid. And so, the GH5, in fact, all the Panasonic cameras, like the way they have the sideways entrance to the SD card, like, why can't every camera do that, right? It just doesn't make any sense. Like you talk about saving space, like design the camera better. But yeah, that's one of the reasons I would opt for an R6 Mark II over the R8. It's got 2 of them. It's got 2 card slots coming from the side. Somebody says, how do you stream on YouTube using the Canon R10? Well, in summary, you've got to have live streaming as an option on your YouTube account, assuming you've passed whatever credentials. I don't know if they allow you to do that off the bat, but I'm assuming, I know maybe the rules have changed, but my assumption is that with YouTube, you need to be a certain number of subscribers and watch time before you get the feature to be able to live stream. And then once you are able to do that within YouTube, you can then request the option to, not request, but choose the option to live stream. So, and then the way you'd be able to do that, you got to use HDMI out to your cam link, and then from there, you have a virtual camera. I enable a virtual camera in OBS using the cam link signal, and then tell YouTube to use that. I hope that was helpful. Somebody else posted it's damn complicated for the using gyro flow with raw video. And we have wow, I literally spent all day yesterday filming footage of my son's football games. I even tried reforming the memory cards to find out that it was this, which is that annoying defaulting feature. If you've connected a HDMI to your Sony ZV-E10, just make sure that the internal recording is also enabled. That's not a feature that's going to be shown unless after. Is it after or before you plug in your HDMI cables? See the video, you'll know. The video is titled Why Your ZV-E10 is Failing to Record Video While Connected to HDMI. Supermoon video, Hijabi Nomad says, wow, I missed a couple of videos and this little man out here speaking in full sentences. Yes, my kid, he's growing up. Gyro Sync, ungrateful YouTubers, this is a great tutorial. I hope so. I put in some work with their tutorials. Hopefully you guys found it of value and it's helpful. And if there are any specific tutorial requests that you guys might have, let me know. I may consider it. The Supermoon video, amazing event and amazing gear. Learned a lot of stuff, Allah about it, from Bamaga Studios. Rode Wireless Go with Google Pixel 6 Pro. Nice setup. I am so glad I ran into this. Glad you found it helpful. George Malum 6542 Super Video. I love the EF 70-300L IS USM. I have owned and later sold it several times. I think after the second time, I'd be like, I'm just keeping this. Changing glass on and off. But I am about to buy another one for an RP setup, for Canon RP, and that I am rebuilding for street use. I'm a retired American living in Bangkok. Also, I shoot Micro Four Thirds as well. I do use some RF lenses, but prefer using EF and LM glass for Leica M for multi-brand setups. Though my Micro Four Thirds gear is already compact and cheap enough, no doubt. I just wish Panasonic would go back to making some awesome compact Micro Four Thirds size portable cameras. Like their GX850 was an amazingly compact, and even like their GX or there was a really mini one with a flip out screen that did 1080p video. Like I want Panasonic to go back to that, but just add some phase detect autofocus to those small cameras. I think we'd have a winner. Because right now the 1-inch sensor cameras are, it is my belief, my assumption, hypothesis, is that with the advent of cell phone technology, cell phones, especially with the Google Pixel 8, even before that, Google Pixel 6, Google 7, 8 Pro, iPhone 13, 14, 15, like these guys are using similar sized sensor and great image quality, and a lot of R&D has gone into the lenses that they put in front of the cameras to make it fit and give you the image quality that you get. Coupled with the post-processing that's happening in the hardware, machine learned, coupled with some of the server-side processing that Google is going to be enabling, like, you know, these ZV-1s and ZV-1 Mark IIs, like they're not going to be able to compete. They're just going to become relics of the past. And so the most innovative thing in that class is the new DJI Pocket 3, just by virtue of the fact that the hardest thing for these things is low light, and the way that you get better low light is slower shutter speed. But then when you're doing digital stabilization with the walk and talk and the small form factor, you got to turn up that shutter speed, so you lose the slow shutter speed advantage. And so what the Pocket 3 does that's genius is that you've got a 1-inch sensor with a gimbal head, so you can maintain a slow shutter speed and then still get a good image. Whereas you can get the same result on a cell phone with a gimbal, but the Pocket 3 is smaller and portable. So that's the one thing that the Pocket 3's got going on. But when you have Micro Four Thirds is a significantly larger sensor. And if you don't believe me, look at the comparison between the original Blackmagic Pocket cinema camera, the original, the OG, and compare that to the image quality that comes out of like the Blackmagic Pocket 4K, right? Granted, it's RAW and all that good stuff, but even the comparison between the two cameras with relation to RAW is night and day. And so similarly with 1-inch sensor cameras, even on Panasonic, they got 1-inch cameras versus their Micro Four Thirds. Micro Four Thirds is amazing. Even with that slightly size increase, you get more low light capabilities. Now imagine, I would love to see the GH5S sensor in a portable Panasonic camera that is the size of a GX85. That would be baller. add gyro data stabilization to that, woo, we've got some good stuff going. That would be my ideal compact camera to take. There's rumors about the Sony FX10 that's rumored to come out in the future. That's like a Super 35 sensor, so APS-C, bigger than Micro Four Thirds, but it is 10 or 12 megapixels. And so essentially the same idea as the GH5S. So that sounds exciting. So you're essentially getting similar, basically it's the FX3, but in a APS-C size sensor. So it's not going to be as good in low light and crazy high ISO as the FX3, but it's going to be better than the other full frame cameras potentially, maybe, but definitely more better than the I guess the A6700 and the FX30s, because you're using seemingly larger pixels, so you get better low light. So those are a couple things. I don't know how I got to that. That's my cognitive difference kicking in. Capturing Saturn and its rings, cool video, thank you. We have Khurshada Aya. He says very informative and quite to the point. I wonder why it's not watched more. I don't know how a lot of the YouTube stuff works. I think it's just more or less, this is something that I've been learning with relation to the comparison between my channel here and some of the other channels that I manage. I manage two other channels. Both of them, so one is about like 140,000 subscribers, and that's another one is about just over 200,000 subscribers. And I compare that to this channel here, for example, and my other personal channels. I have a channel on fitness and martial arts called The Strength Dojo. Both of these are like a couple thousand subscribers each, maybe. And so the difference is that the consistency of content, right? So on this channel, I don't upload content as much as regular nor as structured. Whereas those other channels that have over 100,000 subscribers, we get together as a team. We plan on what content we're going to put together. Like for example, this video here, I'm doing like a super video, which I am batching. I don't even know how long I've been going. But I'm basically recording all of these Q&A videos as one super video, right? Kind of like a podcast style. Whereas on those channels, each comment will get its own video. And each of the answers would be more like tutorial based perhaps. And so and we've also been very, very active with relation to taking advantage of trends as things are happening, seasonal things where seasonal times where people will watch more content. And so we make it a point to come out with daily content. We'll batch produce stuff. We'll produce content that if you were to stop producing right now, we still have enough content to last us for the next 6 months. And so that's one of the key differences. And we also take advantage of all of the media forms that YouTube has to offer, from not only uploading content in its, medium and long form as videos, whether they're like, 30, 40 minutes long or 5 to 10 minutes long or 2 minutes long, but also taking advantage of shorts, also taking advantage of lives, and sticking to a very strong focus. Whereas the focus of this channel and the voice of this channel and the thing that this channel is about has changed and evolved over time, and is still finding its voice. And for that reason, it is my understanding that people are still unclear as to sometimes why they would come here. Like only recently I decided, hey, you know what? I want to change the name of the channel. And I did. I changed it to Creative Comment. Because I feel that's more along the lines of what I'm going to be doing. Like it's the use of creative gear and things like that, but also seeking to capture the cosmos, but the perspective of a marketing professional who's delved into content creation, but has his eyes on the cosmos. So again, these are different things that maybe with that, and I'm taking cue from like the kind of content that has resonated on the channel, and a lot of it has to do with the space stuff, right? Looking for Jupiter and the solar eclipse and things like that, telescopes, right? So so that's basically it. That's my assumption. But at the end of the day, the channel will grow if it grows. If it doesn't grow, that's okay. I will continue to post stuff and share my findings and shenanigans, and that's the other thing, right? I guess a lot of the stuff I share here is more for my cognitive benefit because it allows me to think out loud and understand things better. Whereas the other channels that I've worked on that have over 100,000 subscribers, we've created content deliberately for the value and benefit of the viewers and helping them achieve a particular goal. And so I think that's the key difference. I haven't really defined what is the goal of this channel for the viewer. That would be something that I can, I guess, perhaps once I get very specific and clear on, then I will be able to do it. Same thing with the Strength Dojo channel, right? That channel started as a means of documenting some of the fitness coaching stuff that I was doing, but then it transitioned into a place for me to document and capture a karate black belt's journey into jiu-jitsu. And I started capturing from day one when I started jiu-jitsu, which was back in early 2018. And so I've captured and documented as much as the stuff, but now a lot of the jiu-jitsu content has kind of taken over the channel. And so, but even then, like, the channel exists still for me because I'm documenting stuff and other people so that I can learn better in the area and the art of martial arts, and other people are finding some value in it, but not to the degree of 100,000 subscriber. If that makes sense. Couple that with the fact that there is a sense of presentation, right? That this is a famous line from Megamind, and I love this line where I guess the kid who ends up getting superpowers, if you've seen the movie, he's like, "I'm a super villain." He's like, "You're a villain, but you're not a super villain. You know what makes what make you super? You know what makes me super?" And then he comes out like, presentation, right? And that's what it comes out to. Like, is your stuff, is their presentation itself designed in such a way that is just amazing? And so, yeah, I mean, those are things that kind of need to be taken into consideration. And I think if I were to take more, I guess, focus towards the presentation of the channel, maybe you would get more views. Pretty sure it would, but I haven't. So yeah, R6 versus R7 versus R8, great video. Thank you. The R8, somebody posted, they're saying, Ray Benitez, it overheated for me at about 45 minutes and I wasn't even recording and I was recording HD only. Yeah, it's a challenge. I think the other issue is that if you're recording HD, this is not a test that I did, but I wonder if the Canon R8, does it downsample or does it pixel bin from the 6K source into 1080p? And does that cause poor thermal management? I don't know. Great video on the lenses for all budgets. What else we got? Nice work. Thank you a lot. I have a video for the Canon R8 review, why it's not for you. Those who are in the Sony ecosystem do not switch for Canon as they are open to third-party lenses coming to the Canon R8 for beginner, for professional. As a B cam, it's a steal deal. With adding 50 millimeter prime lenses, you can match level of professional, professionalism. Now, here's the thing. I feel like the Canon R8 is a great backup camera, no doubt. Like, if I have an R6 Mark II and I am a professional shooter with the R6 Mark II, I think it is a great idea to have the R8 as a backup, hands down, without a doubt. Again, if I'm treating it as a backup camera. In an ideal world, the best backup camera is another camera. That is exactly the one that you're using, obviously. But even in my case, right, when I first started with my own home studio, I started with so I had the GH5, and then I got a GH4 as a backup, and I got the G85 as a B cam. Interestingly enough, I started using all three, and then GH4 right now is kind of in these repairs. Both the flip out screen and the micro HDMI input are both done. I can only view stuff through the viewfinder, which is very annoying. But that's beside the point. You got the R6, R7, R8. I've got an R8. The lightweight, smaller body and ergonomics make it for me. Awesome. Tony Stites. I have owned the Canon 50D, 5D Mark III, and now the R8 with the R battery grip. The 5D is a tank and takes awesome pictures in low light. The R8 also takes great pictures in low light, has faster frames per second. The R8 also takes awesome video. If you don't need, I lost it. Also takes, if you don't need the weatherproofing and the dual card slots, go with the and the dual card slot. Or I guess I think you meant if you do need the weatherproofing and the dual card slots, go with the R6. If not, go with the R8. If you're a professional sports photographer, go with the R6 for the extra frames per second. Also, I would also argue, I get that the EOS M is discontinued in terms of support, but the M6 Mark II is a great sports camera. That thing rips with relation to photography. I got like just standard 14 frames per second. You can get like 30 frames per second raw, albeit cropped, right? Electronic shutter, but with mechanical shutter, I think over 14 frames per second continuous for like a while, like a few seconds at least. Like the Canon M6 Mark II as a sports photography tool just totally rips. But I lost my light. I guess that's Q4. Let's make this the last one. Otherwise, the R8 has everything that the R6 has with the R8 and battery grip. I can video close to 3 hours of video and take some pictures. I agree, if you already know photography and you are in line to make money and you have $2,500 and lenses, go R6 all day. If you don't have the money or lenses yet, go R8 because you will spend the extra 1K easy. You will need a minimum of 24 to 70 f2.8 and 70 to 200 f2.8, which will cost you $4,000 unless you buy used, unless you're shooting kids sports, and go with the R7. I mean, I don't know. So with relation to the kind of lenses that you need, I mean, if you're a professional, yeah, I mean, money is not an issue, right? Like if you're a professional shooting real professional sports, yeah, I mean, it's understandable that you would spend upwards of 10 grand. Like I'll tell you right now, like there's a lot of work that I do in terms of the seminars that I'm editing. I have two baller machines with NVIDIA RTX 3080s. These are $6,000 machines and there's two of them, right? Like that's the kind of money that you're going to end up spending when you're doing regular edits and your system is constantly rendering out like, you know, hours upon hours upon hours of material. Like you're going to spend that money and it's like, it's well worth it. Same thing if you talk about capturing the images as opposed to processing video and the machine, then yeah, I mean, like if you're getting paid good money for it, then you're going to spend good money on the tools. Right? You're not going to expect a Formula One driver to be driving a Civic down the racetrack. That would be absurd. You would be expecting them to drive a Formula One race car because that's what's going to help them win. So similarly, it's the question of what is it that you're going to be doing that's going to help you win. And that is the thing that you want to be doing. That's where you want to be spending your money. If there's no defining win factor that's going to put money in your pocket, please buy used. There's no reason to buy new unless you're strapped for, you're loaded with cash. Then let me know. Let me know what services I can provide you, and you can give me some of that cash. Obviously, I'll give you some value. But yeah, that's it. I think we covered 3 months worth of comments here. Hope you guys found that of value and benefit. But yeah, I hope. If you got any more comments, let me know in the comments below. I'll see you soon.